Part of the, so far it's all good. Part of the adjustments was, I can hear it. Let's do it. So the MOU is the document which was added onto this, and then I'll explain the other items. I guess before we get into the agenda, does anybody from the public like to speak up?
No, thank you. I'm sure it'll be covered, right?
Yes. Okay. Yes, we will discuss that.
Okay. I'm good.
Okay?
Yep.
Thank you. All right. Numbers 1 through 11. Our regular reports, bills, taxes, etc., student recognition, enrollments. Number 12 is the approval of the comprehensive plan, which has been available for public view for a minimum of 28 days, which is the state requirement. So this, once this gets approved, I will go in and submit that to the state, and then we're good for another 3 years on that. Alan, Kristen Dottie, myself, as well as committee members, we did surveys. It was a tedious project, but thankfully it's in the books, hopefully, after this.
For sure.
Yeah. Alan, do you want to go over
sure.
the policies?
The policies, we have 8 policies. The 100, the 2 100s, and the 348 are all non-discrimination policies. The first two, 103 and 103.1, are for students. And regular ed students and special ed students is the .1. And then the 348. They all added sexual harassment to those policies. And they also, as I sent them out to you, I always send out in black what's changing. And those are based on any of the changes that have been made under the new ESSA law to make sure that we are providing equitable services to all students. And
ESSA
then,
is the education.
yeah, it replaced the No Child Left Behind, the Education for All Students Success Act. And so those are the update. The unlawful sexual harassment policy added sexual harassment to it. We have a policy in the district that if there's any kind of harassment of any kind, there is a form that teachers fill out, send it to the superintendent. Actually, it comes to me as the Title IX person, and then we proceed, investigate, and so on. So this added sexual harassment to that. The biggest change in policy is policy 239, which is our foreign exchange student policy. Currently, our policy has that on July 1st, we have to have the paperwork from an agency if they're going to place a student here. The last few years, we have not had a true exchange. What's happening is these private organizations are placing students here, but we don't have anybody going there. So we changed the policy to read that it would be a true exchange, that, like a Rotary Club, where they exchange. We've been kind of really inundated with this. There's organizations that will call people in the district and say, will you take this student? And they're private organizations. They want to place 3 kids here in January. They wanted to place, and really what we're finding out is happening is one of them was in Nanticoke. They lasted a couple days there. Then they went from Nanticoke to Wilkes-Barre. Then they wanted to place the student here. They're not successful. We turned them down because our policy said that it had to be there by July 1st, but we also want to put protection in there that these private organizations aren't just placing kids in here, that we're providing education for, and really we're not getting anything in return. Like none of our students aren't going over there. A true exchange is, Rick had a student from Columbia, and then we sent a student here over to Columbia. That's a true exchange. And so that's what our policy states. As we looked at that, then we looked at other districts locally, and we put in some things such as, they need to be in attendance, they need to have their medical records updated, graduation, you know, we don't just give anybody a diploma, they have to have all the credits from the other country and so on and so forth, so we
And
have
that's the way I
that.
worked with him, I know that he got a certificate of attendance or something
Yes.
instead of a
diploma.
diploma, because everything didn't always meld perfectly. But fantastic experience, I would recommend it to anybody, but I think moving forward, being careful with what organizations bring the kids, I think.
The reduction in staff, that's another one that has just been updated because of the trend. It used to be that you could only furlough a teacher, you know, if your enrollment was down. Now, they use economic, but basically what the policy is stating is that you still use seniority, that you just, you know, you just don't get rid of a teacher for any reason, you know. So it kind of clarified that in the law because of the financial crisis in the last couple of years. And then the last two are policies, again, with ESSA. They put in this threshold last year, Rose, or 2 years ago?
I think it was 2 years ago.
2 years ago. And it was $3,500, and they've raised that to $10,000 and $250,000. So when you go out to bid, if we did anything with federal monies for $3,500, we'd have to go out to bid. And, you know, districts were up in arms over it because it was really a lot of work, you know, to do that. So they did raise the threshold on these. Number 14 is the revision to the cafeteria. While they don't have a policy, they do bid out because it's a federal program. The cafeteria is. So Maria has a policy with that. And also the policy 808 changed because if you remember, we weren't allowed to ask students about their balances, and we couldn't, you know, humiliate them. Not that we ever would do that, but now we can ask kids who are in the high school about their balances, and that changed in the policy, and that's the policy changes. Does anybody have any questions? I did send them out to you so you'd have a chance to look at them. I know there were some concerns when I wasn't here, and you know, if you have any questions, please, if you could.
So all these changes are pretty much keep up with the new federal guidelines,
Absolutely.
the new federal program. We don't have much of a choice, we've got to make the changes.
Well, and the other thing too is these policies are changing all the time in terms of, you know, as they're tested. Some of them, you know, they put out and then they realize, you know, there's some things. For instance, the security map is going to talk to you about the grants later on that we're writing. There's all new policies coming out in regards to the school security officer, all of our, you know, procedures and what we do in terms of safety. So those will all be coming soon too. So it's just as things change, so do policies.
Is there a list for the foreign exchange students? Is there a lot of kids with interest in that? Is there
We haven't,
I'm just curious.
Rick's, Emma Starnes was the last one that we sent. They've been trying to send kids in here, and I think it's because districts are saying no to them for the same reason like ours, like with July 1st.
And I think Jay did that on his own. He went to the Rotary, knew that they sponsored the kids,
I'm just curious.
and asked them to set it up. And she originally wanted to go to Europe, I believe, and they said, no, we've got somebody coming from Columbia that works better for us. So
So if anybody wanted to go, we would certainly set that
There's
up.
not like a list of kids that.
No, no, mm-mm. No.
Yeah, right.
It's
I'm
the
just
opposite, it's the kids coming from another country,
There's
there's
a
a
list.
list, but not ours, no.
How do we decide each month which policies are being updated? Do those come from
PSBA.
We get updates.
They get an update, they'll send, you also get this as well, and it will tell you which policies are being looked at, and then we go in and we update them.
Okay, and so we're basically keeping up with them when they do it?
Yes. They usually do it 3 times a year, like the big ones come out, like there'll be another one now in November. There was August, November, and then there's usually one in February, and then one again at the end. They try it 4 times a year.
And the foreign exchange student policy, that had some bearing on a specific situation that we had?
Yes.
That's
So
Yes.
is that change didn't come from PSBA, that came from
From us.
the last
Correct.
update that took place did, which I think.
2015,
that was
I think it was,
2015.
yeah.
So, as a result of our experiences and what we've gone through this year, we said we need to address it.
We have no guidelines as to, if we were to send a student overseas, is it just a random pick or interest or?
It would be based on
Merit.
student interest and, you know, I don't think it addresses the qualifications that we recommend,
Yeah.
but it does address qualifications coming in, for the students coming in, not for the students going out.
Both
So
students have to have, like, the parents paid for everything, so
Mhm.
that, you know, they would have to be a student that had the grades to do that.
Okay.
We would require them to provide us with transcripts upon return to verify that they had completed the necessary coursework, so that we can then add that to their
And
transcripts.
how would a student know whether what they were going to learn in that year was going to be equivalent to something that we were going to learn here?
And it's not, like, I know in our situation, they only go to 11th grade in Columbia. He had graduated 11th grade when he came here, so he would, for us, he was a senior. For them, down there, he would have been starting college that year. So there's a lot of things that don't really
That's why a
necessarily
lot of
mesh.
our kids don't. It's usually kids that are in our, you know, Excel or in gifted programs because they have the credits.
Mhm.
So that if they take the time off to go there for a semester, when they come back, they don't get far behind.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, number 15 is the paper I passed out to you along with the agenda. That this is an MOU. In order to address some of the concerns with our ball fields and keeping up with just general maintenance, we wanted to move the custodian from the night shift to the day shift, and then bring a sub in on a temporary basis. However, the association came to us and said it's unfair labor practice because we didn't post a position. We said, well, it's not a permanent position. This is a temporary situation. So in discussions, we came up with an MOU basically just saying it is temporary. It'll go to the end of the school year. If we decide to make it a permanent position, we will have to post. If not, then the person goes back to the regular position that originally hired for.
Do you already have somebody in this role?
Yes, there's currently something now.
Doesn't anyone here have a problem with this?
I'm
We already
trying-
have somebody.
I'm trying to understand what we're doing here first. Just start from the beginning.
So we brought a person from the night shift to the day shift to help out with getting fields prepared, especially with the weather, it's how it's been, addressing some of the concerns with the humidity levels that, you know, we had cleaning during the day and stuff like that. And we were bringing in a substitute in the night, into that nighttime position to fill those duties. But they're saying that we didn't post a position for the day shift to give other employees an opportunity to access that position.
Why was that individual pulled? Because he was qualified for that position?
Fair enough, I don't have
So
a problem with
what's-
that. What I have a problem with is that we should be doing this first before that gets initiated. That's how I feel.
Well, they
Well,
agreed
there
to
wouldn't have been
allow
a
it
problem, but the union had a problem.
Right.
So, but
Right.
basically, this could just be a temporary until all the rain that we're having.
Right.
Correct, and it was on a seasonal basis.
I
We were,
understand that.
you know, as during the spring, you know, we might bring the person back.
That's
It's
what
on an
it's
as-needed
supposed
basis at this point.
They took one of the
But
guys from the
usually
night
that
shift who they
happens,
knew was
correct?
capable and would do the work.
But the only people that had a problem with it is the union. Okay. So it's
So this is,
Not-
right,
on the district.
this is so that we can go ahead without having a grievance filed.
Yeah.
Is there overtime involved in any of this overtime pay?
Just the additional substitute that night.
And I think Mr. Dundas briefly mentioned that they're kind of looking for manpower at some point, right? They're,
Correct.
they feel that they're,
Potentially next year, depending on the need, if, you know,
so whether that's a
potentially
hire or
looking
not,
to
is
add the position next year.
kind of a good way to see if that's, if it helps out having this sub.
Exactly. Okay. 16 are new drivers. 17 is a change in a van route for a special needs student. 18 is a change in, I'm sorry, this is an additional one. We have students going to the Alternative Learning Center in Plains, which ties into number 19, this new agreement. Based upon a student disciplinary issue, we need to place a student an alternative facility, and this is the agreement with that facility so that we can properly educate the students. And that also ties into number 23, which you'll see down the road. Number 20 is, we don't currently have somebody in this facility. However, this is for special education services. This is actually the group that pulled out of the partial hospitalization program, which was formerly NHS. So people were working and scrambling to get a provider for those services, but this group is still providing other services. I believe they're out of, this is in Scranton, yes. So we'd be able to access those services if need be, depending on students' IEP or whatever it might be. Number 21, this is facilities use request. These two groups have been using our facilities on an annual basis based upon our audit and the fact that we should document whenever a group is accessing our facilities and not being charged that we have them board approved, which is our policy. So, but these two groups have been here for several years. Number 22.
They do pay for the custodian and stuff, but they might know that.
Do they?
They're open they're open the same hours as the
Yes,
school.
exactly.
Like,
So that-
they don't come extra hours or anything like that.
So this is after school programming. So we do already have the staff there.
And Gary, in the summertime, if they run the program in the summer and they're there earlier, they just change the shifts. It's just somebody's just there at that time in both of the buildings.
22 is the overnight trip for the Honor Society in May, and the chaperones for that trip. 23 is a result of a student disciplinary issue that we dealt with a couple weeks ago. This is a waiver of expulsion, and hence that was the reasoning for one of those placements, and the transportation that went along with it. And then 24 is a substitute list, guest teachers, teacher aide, etc. Letter B of 24 are co-advisors. Now this afternoon I did also receive advisors for the hot rod clubs, and those will be on the agenda for Monday, but we didn't have time to put them on for tonight, so that will be in addition to this one. Letter C are winter coaches for junior high wrestling, weight room, etc. Letter D are the spring coaches. And all but one of those are the same from last year, which would be the boys' tennis. And then letter E are the volunteers for approval. And that's the agenda. I do have a couple informational items and one topic that as a result of some concerns that have been brought up with substitute pay, substitute shortages. This is Barcarola did come to our work session last month and asked that we would consider doing something to address substitute pay. We did discuss it administratively as to various options. There is a concern, not just here, but across the state, especially in this area with substitute shortages, in having our positions filled on a regular basis. So the consideration that we came up with would be if we would like to encourage more substitutes to come to the district and maintain them on a regular basis to increase the daily rate. It's currently $95 a day for certified teachers and $85 for guest teachers. So we would consider shifting those to either $190 or $195 to make it more competitive with surrounding districts as well as encourage more substitutes to be here regularly. And Ms. Sparkarelli, we appreciate all that you do for us because you're here all the time. You do know what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you.
So we would do a $10 raise for both positions? Yes, and
I'd like to see us eliminate the difference between the two, because I think they do the same job, and they both have to have a degree, even though it's not a teaching certificate. So I think we should just go to a flat, whatever the rate ends up being, but that's just my opinion. What do you guys think?
I can't disagree with that. You're right. Doing the same job.
They're doing the same job, so I think
I'm sorry.
I said, I would hope we're doing more than babysitting.
I only hear what the subs say they do, so.
Wallen Park pays more, I believe, well, Delaware Valley pays quite a bit more, they're about 120 a day. Wallen Park is 100 a day. We're on par with Homesdale and, I have to check in with Northport.
And the Valley pays $65 a day, so, you know, it's all over.
a problem filling subs this school year.
there's been a problem for a couple of years, but
It's been
it seems like we just lost one of our subs that subbed regularly in the buildings. Took a job at Schaefer's Hardware because it wasn't pragmatic to stay on the sub list.
Who's that?
So, and she did a nice job for us, so I think our problem seems to be growing.
But she's getting called in though, that's the question.
I think she was, I think
Absolutely.
she was here quite regularly. I don't, you guys.
Oh, she was here almost every day.
And so she had, I think, some job security to some degree, but I think the pay was also right there where it was worthwhile to, and I don't know if they provide benefits or not, but we currently don't to the subs, so that's I'm sure an issue too.
Is there such a thing as a full-time substitute?
We kind of, a couple of,
We were
Gary
kicking
and
that
I
around.
kicked it around, we
I
talked
think
about
some
a couple,
districts have them.
and some
Kicking
districts I think do.
outside the box.
It sounds like it's cost prohibitive and it may actually exacerbate the problem, not necessarily the problem, but knowing you had somebody in the building made more people to
I
take,
think some large
take today
districts
off.
have it. Some
So-
large districts have it because they have a
So,
need every day.
and we had kind of, and I bantered back and forth with several people out, and at first I thought it'd be a great idea, but it sounds like it may not be and the cost is, right now at 95, we're roughly a third of the salary of a regular teacher at step 1A without benefits. So it's a big cost increase to add. If you added one in each building,
Just because
it's a
of being
lot of,
full-time.
it's, yeah.
Right.
And not that they're not worth it, it's just,
Right.
how do we
And
make
we're
that
short
jump?
more than one.
But also administratively, we had a discussion this past week about being very cautious about when people are taking professional development, about when people are doing field trips. Not that we want our students to have those experiences, we want the teachers to have professional development, but be very careful about who's out of the building, when they're out of the building, how often they're out of the building. So, we did charge the principals with keeping a close eye on that as well.
We've actually developed a calendar district-wide that everybody's gonna put into, like when people are out in their building, so we can kind of watch it, and all the administrators will put in when somebody's out, when there's professional development. Now, we don't know if somebody calls in sick, obviously, but if plan, so that everybody's not pulling for the same days and stuff.
We just did this at work, basically the same exact thing. And one of the reasons that they told us that we needed to do it is somebody just leaves and there's a fire, they're looking for somebody. Nobody knows where you are. So you kind
Well,
of,
it's true.
everybody has a calendar, so there you go.
Exactly.
Kind of one little thing, but
It helps.
it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have no problem with giving them the same amount, but technically guest teachers aren't teachers, and they're not really doing the same thing. Of course, the certified teacher might not be doing the same thing either. If you have a